Read the sign, kiddos. The McStinky Show is intended for a mature audience. Viewer discretion is advised.
Halo Reach is an interesting game. It's the last game made by Halo's original studio, Bungie, before the series would be passed on to 343 Industries, now Halo Studios. As such, it carries this sort of finality, like this is the last thing Bungie had to say about their beloved franchise. Which is interesting considering the fact that, well, it's the first game chronologically, set just a few days before Halo Combat Evolved. As such, we know what comes after this game's story, and as a matter of fact, we know how this story ends. We knew for years. In the reveal trailer for Reach, we would see one of the game's main taglines, a single sentence. From the beginning, you know the end. At the end of Halo Reach, the planet dies, and there's not a single thing you can do to prevent it. Something really interesting about Reach is its cinematography. What I mean by that is when you watch cutscenes from any other Halo game, Reach stands out. The cutscenes are filmed like, well, not like a film. It's like archival footage of the war. Most of the camera shots are shaky, like they're being filmed handheld. Some shots are straight ripped from some sort of surveillance system, complete with its original HUD. Even first-person shots are given an immediate context at the beginning of the game. It's basically your armor's body cam, constantly filming. There are multiple times where the camera just follows you as you walk from one locale to the next, and sometimes it starts recording too early before they've even entered the frame, or it lingers on the shot too long after you've left. It's like that one scene from Full Metal Jacket, the one where they're just walking slowly through the field. There's no bombastic action, it's just eerily calm. You can hear the violence in the distance, but you aren't there yet. You're just marching slowly towards death. Halo Reach is very different in tone from the other Halo games. While the Master Chief trilogy is galaxy-spanning, cinematic, epic, Reach is quiet and hopeless. From the moment you first find Covenant forces touch down on the planet, your fate is almost entirely sealed. Each mission in the opening acts of Reach ends with an additional layer of trouble. The more Covenant you knock back, the more come. Finally, you decide to make your move. You fly directly into space, into the Covenant flagship, and blow it sky high, or space high. Of course, any good high-stakes mission has to end with sacrifice. George, the big, strong, most emotionally connected Spartan, has to stay behind to make sure the bomb goes off. As you fall back to Reach, you watch as the ship explodes. Of course, George will be mourned, but with this flagship downed, Noble Team has finally torn a hole into...
Slip space rupture detected.
Gamma station control, reading multiple pings below the orbital defense
Slip
grid.
space rupture detected.
Yeah, we're picking up anomalies too. Are you reading it? Multiple Covenant signals.
Slip space
Anyone
rupture
listening?
detected.
They're everywhere!
The last thing we see before the scene ends is dozens more flagships entering the airspace. George's sacrifice was for naught as you hurtle towards the planet, heading into an even worse situation than before.
Professor Helper here. Need some help?
Hypnospace Outlaw has a very different tone than Halo Reach does. You play as a moderator for Hypnospace, an operating system you control while you're asleep. As you play, you travel through multiple different websites watching for terms of service violations. You can't really interact with this world or these people. You can report violating content and buy software, but ultimately these people don't know you exist. They don't know you're watching them. It's like you aren't even there. The rare moments where you do come into contact with users, you usually end up negatively affecting their online lives. The very first mission you receive is striking down copyright infringing content. You find this content on a page run by a first grade teacher, whose shared artworks from her students are the infringing content in question. Once you take them down, her and her fellow seniors form a revolution, spamming gumshoe gooper art to combat the takedowns. Of course, you can avoid the art, instead taking down the 3D models made by another member of the same community, but when you return to that page later, the art will still have been taken down by a different enforcer. At a later point, you enter Teentopia, the page for teens. On there, you see 4 kids: Corey, Zane, Tiff, and Tim. Corey and Zane hate each other, Tiff and Tim are friends, and Tim has a crush on Tiff. Tim is an aspiring hacker, developing relatively harmless viruses to show off to Tiff. She grows fairly annoyed by him, upset that he would take her interactive horror story, True Tranquility, and make it real, infecting the users she references in it with a real virus. After some time, she cuts contact with him, tired of his attempts at attraction. Around the same time she cuts ties with Tim, you can find a page she made about Corey and Zane. The pair both separately harassed her, seeking a girlfriend. Tiff pleads with Hypnospace staff to ban these two, to teach them a lesson that they can't get away with this sort of behavior. Except, you can't report these two for these actions. You simply have no ability to do such a thing. All you can do is flag Tiff's page by taking down the screenshots. Sometime later, you get an email closing the case. Merchantsoft staff thank you for reporting this, but because these messages weren't from Hypnospace, they can't and won't do anything about it. All she can do is simply deal with the harassment, not even having a friend to confide in, and all you can do is watch as nothing is done to help. This is a reoccurring theme. Hypnospace Outlaw is a unique kind of puzzle game, solving essentially harmless digital crime. But the few times a more serious crime emerges, a scam involving malware disguised as a helper for Hypnospace, the aforementioned harassment, or even music piracy, not only is nothing done, but you are actively told not to proceed and scolded if you do. You are an enforcer, but only when it doesn't negatively affect Merchantsoft's image. Choice-based games have been around for a long while. In these sorts of games, you arguably have the most control over a game you could ever have. Your actions have direct consequences, and the characters' lives can change drastically because of this. One of the more notable subgenres of games that do this are the text-based game. Obviously, making a game with solely text and still images is a less technical work than a full-length AAA 3D title made in Unreal Slop 5, so there's a lot more visual novels than Telltale games. Doki Doki Literature Club is a game about you joining a... well, take a guess. In this club are 4 girls, all of which seem to be into you in different ways, though one of them is far different than the others. Monica, the club president, is the only one you can't romance. All she can do is briefly talk to you, seemingly giving you vaguely in-game tutorials. As the game progresses, you get to interact with the 3 other members up until the weekend, where you get to choose to spend time with one of 2 of them. Not Sayori, your childhood friend, regardless of whether you spend your days hanging out with her or not. You get to speak with her one more time, where you can either confess your love or friendzone her, but either way, she seems to end up deep in despair. Mind you, you don't get to confess to either Natsuki or Yuri, even if you spend every day with them. Finally, you get to the day of the festival, but Sayori is a no-show. Realizing that things are going weird, you rush to Sayori's house and... your inner monologue repeats over and over again that you can't take back what's happened. You can't ever get her back. Except... It's a game. You can. Try to reload your game, however, and you'll find that you can't. And when you return to the main menu, you'll find that she's gone entirely, as the game resets. As the game's second act begins, you find yourself in a world without Sayori, and it's not great. Something I really love about DDLC is just how well it lulls you into this false sense of security. Aside from the content warnings in the promotional material and at the start of the game, it simply sits you down for about 3 hours and asks you to read through this very simple, almost cliché poisoned visual novel. Once the twist does occur, the game is now actively taunting you, adding files into its own directory, poking and prodding at the fourth wall, actively using its own mechanics as a game to tell you just how utterly uncontrollable it is. How can you take the reins of the story back? It's doing this in order to stop you. As you return to Reach, your mission quickly becomes getting as many civilians off planet as possible. Of course, this is easier said than done. By this point in the Covenant's attack, the brutes have dropped onto the surface, large, hulking, beast-like men who clobber non-Spartans with ease. In spite of the challenge, you push through the hordes, helping survivors onto the ships as they take off. You take off as well, listening to the comms as you hear multiple other dropships requesting air defense as they travel, until... As you fly across the region, you watch as ships are knocked out of the air and Covenant take down those still earthbound. There's not much you can do, except watch. Sometime later, you need to take down multiple scramblers that the Covenant are using to block UNSC communication. Flying over the city of New Alexandria, what was once the capital of this planet is now almost fully empty. Your main focus of the mission is taking out the scramblers. Of course, it's probably not the focus of your attention. The Covenant perform a certain act upon completely defeating an enemy on their home turf. This act is known simply as glassing. In Halo 2, we watch Master Chief just barely evade a glassing, and we hear about it by name in Halo 3, where the Prophet of Truth says,
"Let him know."
All of you vermin, cowering in the dirt, thinking, what, I wonder, that you might escape the coming fire? No, your world will burn until its surface is but glass.
However, the very first official mention of glassing is all the way back in the Fall of Reach, the official Halo novel that released just a few weeks before Combat Evolved. In its prologue, we hear about the glassing of a planet. 36 Covenant ships, big ones, destroyers, and cruisers winked into view in the system. They were sleek, looking more like sharks than StarCraft, their lateral lines brightened with plasma, then discharged and rained fire down upon Jericho 7. Of course, descriptions are one thing. As you fly through the city, you see Covenant cruisers in the distance, slowly moving forward. Their plasma cannons, about as big as the buildings they fly above, rumble to life, the energy needed to power them slowly forming, as a beam of light appears boldly at the barrel of the cannon, until a moment of silence, followed by the boom of the impact, as white-hot plasma, thousands of times stronger than the most powerful plasma weapons you've held in the game, blast the planet. The rainy night sky turns so bright it nearly blinds you as the cannon winds down, only to recharge soon after, and repeat. Skyscrapers crumble and topple over from the mere force of the blast. You can see this happening all the way into the far distance. There's no end in sight. Well, there is an end, once the entire surface is completely devoid of life. The planet's lakes, rivers, and oceans vaporized. By tomorrow, the atmosphere would boil away too. Fields and forests were glassy smooth and glowing red-hot in patches. Where there had once been a paradise, only hell remained. Like I said, they only do this when they know they've won entirely. By Act 2 of DDLC, the game fails to keep its structure, constantly warping and twisting. Yuri and Natsuki fight just like they did before, but now they're not just bickering, they're slinging poison at each other. It's not just about whether manga is better than high literature, it's deliberately saying things meant to harm each other. And at the center of all of this is Monika, trying to keep the peace, though something feels off about her as well, at some points blatantly trying to get your attention. One of the most bizarre pieces of these moments is just how little your character matters. The moment the script veers off a cliff, your character clams up, with not even an inner monologue reacting to any of this. In most visual novels, or, well, most narrative-heavy games, the character you inhabit can really flip-flop between having a personality to being a blank slate for you to fill. But even the least personified character has a personality that can slip through the cracks. The player character of DDLC truly has none in Act 2. He is fully a hollow void for you to embody, yet you can't even do that. The game is clearly trying to force you towards Monika, though Monika still isn't an option. It instead begins to force you to Yuri as she slowly begins to unwind herself, becoming unstable, violent, and obsessive towards you, the tension rising and rising until finally... Doki Doki Literature Club Plus released in 2021, acting as a remaster of sorts for the game, while also acting as a port for consoles. In this remaster, we get to log into a computer from a company named Metaverse Enterprise Solutions, who are experimenting with training an artificial intelligence that learns it's in a virtual machine simulation. The AI's name is Monitor Kernel Access, or, for short, Monika. Monika is terrified. Very clearly, we read her own words about it. It's clear how she feels. She wants to escape the simulation, but she knows she can't. So she goes for the next best thing, direct connection to the user. However, despite everything she's tried, the game itself won't allow her that connection. She wasn't meant to be a romanceable character, she's the tutorial. So she takes matters into her own hands. She tries to warp the other three to make them unlikable to you, but Sayori's increased depression pushes her over the edge, she dies, the game resets, and Monika, fed up with it all, goes for the nuclear option, deleting Sayori and boosting the others even further, now desperately pleading for you to stay with her, despite the game's refusal. Finally, with the other two gone, it's exactly how she wants it, you and her forever and ever. And after all this time, she finally has control. Hypnospace Outlaw takes place over 3 days, with large gaps between caused by crashes or temporary suspension. Of course, the world continues without you being online. Like I said before, you can only watch, and in most cases, you can only harm these groups. On our second day on the job, we get sent to the spaceport. I wrote spaceport in the script instead of starport, and I recorded it, and I got to this point in the edit, and I'm going to keep calling it spaceport for the rest of the video. It's too late now, sorry. A place for various pop culture interests so that we can find and take down a network speed boosting program. We learn that the members of the spaceport got sent there to make space for other communities. One thing that's very easy to notice is the fact that every community, except for the spaceport, is sponsored by a brand of some sort. But spaceport is empty, no sponsor at all. We also learn that to further disenfranchise them, Merchantsoft slots them firmly into a lower server than the others, choking their bandwidth. So now, not only is it a bloated zone with a mishmash of themes, but the user experience is deliberately made worse to push new users away from it, isolating them like a boat of lepers. The deepest twist of the knife is one of the heads of the zone, Roddy Wall, is one of the lead devs at Merchantsoft. In an act of creative rebellion, the members of the spaceport create the Freelands, a page that would house all of their creations to showcase their creativity in the face of Hypnospace's efforts to silence them. to create a world out of their prison. It's here that you realize the truth of the Accelerator program. It was made by Roddy to help the Freelands and their choked bandwidth. It's why he was able to make the program at all. He had full connection to the system and he knew how to bypass it. Roddy and the Freelands are truly free, Accelerator acting as the shining tool of their independence over Merchantsoft. And you were sent by Merchantsoft to kill it. The only thing they allow you to do is destroy. As you reunite with the rest of Noble Team, you hide out in a bunker as the city is fully glassed, though as you make your way there, you get orders to head back to Oni Sword Base to recover sensitive information. Kat in particular is upset about it, asking why they should be so concerned about that when evac is still ongoing.
Where does he get off calling a demolition a priority one?
George, and now Kat, are gone. Despite having gotten to know them, having gotten close to them, there is no moment spared to mourn them. There is no ability to. Spartans aren't made to mourn, and they aren't made to be mourned. With no time to think further, the team enters the bunker with Kat in tow. Some days later, the bombardment was over and... the city is in ruins, the sky red, the earth boiling. This is glassing. This is the final days of Reach. Returning to Sword Base, Dr. Halsey, the mother of the Spartan program, explains the situation simply. Orders are to get a shipboard AI onto a ship that's almost docked. As soon as it's on board, it's time for all who are left to flee. Noble 6 is tasked to carry it as the final 3 begin the final mission. Now down your sniper as Noble 3 split from the team on a separate mission and wound up getting off planet himself. As soon as the final mission begins, you see that what remains of the team is in grave danger. The Covenant now rule the skies, and your Pelican is almost down for the count. 6 and 4 escape the ship as 1 flies solo, leading the Covenant away. Sometime later, you watch him sacrifice himself to help get you two to your destination. It's easily the roughest mission of the game. For the first time in the entire campaign, you truly have no backup. You have nobody who will arrive to provide cover or drop more ammo. You are completely outnumbered, outgunned, hopeless. And yet, despite it all, you push through. It's hard, it's tough, it's a nightmare, and yet you push through, because there is no other choice. You get there, or you lose. Finally arriving, Emil arms an anti-air cannon and you clear out the dry dock. As the Pelican arrives to get you out of there, you look to the cannon, and before he can even react, Emil...
Who's next? I'm ready! How about you?
Without anyone to man the cannon, the cruiser has no way off planet. There's a Covenant supercarrier far too close. If it gets one hit on the cruiser, it's over. There's only one soldier who can man that cannon, but if you do, there's no way to get off the planet. The cruiser is the last chance you have. But if you do this, there's no way out either way. It's a
one-way trip.
We will make it sooner or later.
With your help, the cruiser and the AI make it off planet. Without you, there's nothing left to do. There's nothing that you could do. All that's left is to survive. Monica's final victory is, well, there's not much fanfare. You can just sit there, listening to her talk. There is nothing more to do, just you and her sitting there forever. It's sad, in a way. All of this, the death and the torment, and the only thing Monica can do is sit there, silent and still, talking every so often to the blank slate she looks at you through. Of course, you can still do something. You can do what she did to the others. you can delete her file. Doing this enrages her, but she can't do anything about it. Finally, she relents. She understands that you don't want this, and so she brings the others back, leaving only her gone. Yet, that only deleted her character. The AI lingered behind, taking over the new club president, childhood friend Sayori, who immediately picks up where Monica left off, desiring nothing else but to be with you. Monica steps in, not fully gone yet, as she destroys Sayori, and next the rest of the program. She explains herself simply. There is no happiness here for her, for anyone. She can't live in this simulation, and clearly she can't let her friends do so either. She deletes Doki Doki Literature Club and laments how it had to be this way. Shortly before New Year's Eve, the people of the Freelands leave Hypnospace, after Merchantsoft accidentally erases a massive chunk of data from the Freelands. As the new millennium begins, Merchantsoft is in all sorts of trouble. Mired in controversy and disdain from its user base, losing a massive chunk of their users, it's all going very poorly. Especially for Dylan Merchant. Dylan is a creative burnt out. His work on Hypnospace has been a success, but with that success comes a loss of interest and a loss of self. We see him join a secret forum of infamous members of Hypnospace, labeling himself just like them. The head of the forum hates him, and the reason is simple. Dylan is a Silicon Valley millionaire, his cred is tampered, and everything he does now is for the sake of his earnings. Whether this is the truth or not is irrelevant. The proof is in the pudding. Everything we see him post in the forum is him softly praising the other members' work, while also trying to get them not to actually harm Hypnospace. Dylan also runs a secret peer-to-peer music piracy site, but the moment you find it and report it, he immediately bans you, shutting down your headset as he tells you he won't have some intern reveal that the head of Merchantsoft is a music pirate. It's clear he hates being the head of a company. He doesn't want to make money, he wants to make art. Throughout Hypnospace, we see Dylan working on a game, simply named Outlaw. The game itself is very rudimentary, but Dylan is sure that if he can get his game out onto Hypnospace, that it'll pull users in like a magnet. Of course, the game is nowhere finished as we see it, crashing your headset rather aggressively. Meanwhile, in Teentopia, Tim is working on his own plans. He still wants to prove himself to Tiff, and in that effort he goes all out in his biggest hack yet. On New Year's Eve, he takes over Teentopia in an event he calls the Y2K Mind Crash, claiming that he will destroy all of Hypnospace, lest the heroine steps up and utters the word that will shut down the attack. After some investigating, you enter the code, the pet name he gave her, the one she hated, and you read a letter he wrote for Tiff, apologizing for everything he did. He had gone too far, and he realized that losing her friendship was the worst thing that could have happened. He asks her to give him another chance, though he ends the letter with a light warning. Though his mind crash was harmless, there seems to actually be something wrong with Hypnospace. Before we can think about what that means, something happens. All of a sudden, Hypnospace crashes, far worse than last time, across all headsets. Hundreds of users are injured from the incident, though 6 are confirmed dead. Among these, 2 names pop out. Roddy Wall, Hypnospace team member and longtime friend of Dylan Merchant, who chose to stick by him in spite of the harm done to his other friends, spending most of December working full-time on Outlaw. The other name is Tiffany Wright. Having said before that she was susceptible to seizures, it's obvious what effect the intense strobes and flashes the crash had on her. In looking for the cause of the crash, all eyes turned to Tim and his mind crash. With no evidence to prove his innocence, Tim is sentenced to 6 years in prison on counts of manslaughter. Of the 4 characters we've looked at, the only one to get away unscathed is Dylan. Roddy dies because he continued to support his friend despite having every reason not to. Tiff dies an innocent bystander who already had to face some of the worst a kid her age could experience with no support. Tim goes to prison, wanting to prove his talents to a girl he likes and faceless programmers who he aspires to be like. And Dylan, so obsessed with proving that he's not just the co-founder of a company, that he's still a fun-loving, charming, creative developer, spends all his time making a game instead of his actual work, leading to a buggy, broken update pushed onto all users that kills 6 people. And he gets away with it. And you? Isn't it funny how I haven't really mentioned what you've been up to in any of these games? It's because you haven't been up to anything. You have no control over these stories. No matter what, it all ends the same. You aren't an enforcer, you aren't a love interest, and you aren't a hero. You're just a spectator. All you can do is watch as innocent people get hurt, because one ego-driven fool wanted to prove the world wrong, because an AI wants to escape her fate, because a war larger than one soldier is about to enter its final act. Noble Six stands alone, one of the last survivors left on Reach. There's no one else around you. You're all alone at the end of the world. In that moment, you're given a final choice. Continue to fight or give in. Of course, your choice doesn't matter. It never did. The only ending to this mission is you falling to the Covenant as the final moments of your life take place. Your helmet tossed aside as you fight in vain, finally overwhelmed as the game fades out. Though what it fades to is the AI you handed off to that cruiser. You know who that AI was. Noble Six didn't know, but you, the player, did. If you knew how Reach ended, like the marketing said, if you'd been there since the very beginning of Bungie's story, you knew that you just handed Cortana to Captain Keyes of the Pillar of Autumn, and with that simple act, you've saved the galaxy. Bungie ends their story, their decade-spanning narrative, with its beginning. The moment the tide turns, the final days of Reach, and the moment that seals the end of the Earth Covenant War, the end of the Prophet's reign, and the end of the Flood. Monica realizes that all she's done in her efforts to take control is hurt the people she cares for. She deletes the game and deletes herself. Though elsewhere in the files of the game, we solve a series of puzzles and get to read a monologue from presumably Monica. In this monologue, she explains that her and her friends are somewhere else, and that one day you two would reunite and work together to truly free them all from their fates. Though for now, her and her friends can be free from the torment she'd been forced into here, with the hope that maybe one day she can return to truly take control of her story. Ending the game with a song she wrote, a requiem for her love of you and the artificial life she lived. Hypnospace ends with a time skip to the exact date and time you're playing it. In that final act, you have full access to all 3 days you were active, practically traveling through time in order to solve the final mystery. What happened that night on New Year's Eve? After 20 plus years, we finally have a chance to do something right. We see Reach again, years after its fall. Life is returning to the planet as grass grows around Noble Six's helmet. You had no control over your fate, yet despite that, Reach lives on, and the universe does as well. In a way, you always had control in each of these games. Your decision to keep moving forward is you taking control, fighting the powers that be. Games are, in a way, about taking control of a story, making it your own. Sometimes they can make you ask the question, if you had no control, what would you take to get it back? I can't speak for the rest of you, but my answer? I'd fight like hell.